My interest in Dogme came about because of a tennis weekend and grocery shopping, but more of that later. I've been a teacher most of my adult life, and it's only teaching business that has given me pause. Why is it that business people come to us, the English teacher? What do they want? I understand that people come to the teacher to learn biology or geography. The teacher knows more than they do. But business? I know very little about business. So what is it the business English learner wants? This is where I need to tell you about the tennis league. When I was at school, I played tennis. I overcame the handicap of being left-handed and the disadvantage of having a very hideous, old, heavy wooden tennis racket. And after a lot of practice, I was almost to serve an ace. But once the school gates closed behind me, I didn't play tennis anymore. There was no need. After many years of marriage, children, raising children, making dinners for my husband's clients, we, my husband and I, were invited to a tennis weekend. Now, I need to stress that this was business related because I'm not the kind of person who mixes in the set that have tennis weekends, but there we are. I was instantly whisked back to my school days, and I knew, without a shadow of a question of a doubt, that there was no way that I could pull off a serve and volley that would be acceptable with the tennis set. I was not going to go lumbering around a court dressed in my tennis whites and a new pair of Nikes, making a complete idiot of myself. My husband went alone. I sat on the sofa, breathing easy, but I knew that I had let him and probably myself down. So I know very well why it is that business English students come to us. They don't want to go out in public and make fools of themselves speaking in English. And more of them are being asked. They want to avoid that complete sense of panic when asked to stand up and do something English. They want to be able to take on the challenge of giving a presentation or managing a meeting or holding together a video conference in English. In fact, they just want to go out and play a reasonably competent game of tennis. So what do you need to play tennis? Well, you need tennis balls, tennis racket, somebody else, tennis net, and a court. And to speak English, vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, a context, and somebody else. That's it. You don't need famous people telling you how to do it, and biographies of champions, and boys, and fancy juice bottles, and umpires and commentators and spectators applauding. We're not training top-seeded players here. We're not training people for a championship. We're not training champions at all. We're just trying to help people to be more successful, more effective communicators. Well, that's what I've come to understand in the 10 years that I've been doing this. When I first started EFL at the centre that I still work at in Warwickshire, I was introduced to our founder. Now, he's a Chomskyite, which may or may not be, depending on your point of view, but it's beyond the remit of this talk. I'm not going to go into transformation, grammar, and innate structures or anything of that sort. But what he propounds is that we teach the student what he or she wants to say, him to say that, no more and no less. And we've been using this principle for 35 years. And although it is a little more teacher-led than other regimes, it plays at the center of the lesson, the focus is exclusively on his or her needs. As a more or less dyed-in-the-wool poet, when I first started EFL, I was desperately in need of these by famous people and videos to show me how to do it, and for boys and for kai and umpires and commentators. I found it extremely difficult to accept that what I knew and what the student wanted or needed was far more effective and far better than what I could find in any course book. I needed some kind of verification. I needed authority to tell me I was doing the right thing, or at least teaching the right thing. And that's where I came across Dogme. I went trawling through all the repositories and archives of EFL knowledge and experience, and I found this that I thought answered my quest. You, me, and the language. Now, it was such a relief. I can't explain to you what the relief was when I found someone who's out there, high profile, in the EFL world, talking about the way I taught, giving credibility, and of course giving me some credibility as well. Now, the tenets of Dogme are well known to all of us in EFL, and I'm not here to expound their virtues yet again. But I am convinced that this is, and be careful what I say here, that this is one of the best ways of teaching business English. And let me distill in a rather haphazard way the tenets of Dogme so that I can take through the way I implement it. So forgive me, Scott, Luke, wherever you are, for this rather quick look at these. The three tenets are that every lesson should be conversation-driven or conversation-rich. The focus of the lesson is on the emergent language. And last but not least, the lesson must be materials light. So let's go to the first tenet, conversation. Critically, work in an immersion environment, a complete immersion environment. The more L1 you use in a lesson, the further away you get from Dogme. Don't use any other language. In order to keep the conversation within some kind of context, or to pursue the tennis analogy, to work on a marked court, give your students something to talk about. Make it business, but generally enough for them all to have had some kind of experience with it. So, for example, I had a suggestion at a meeting, something everyone has done in the business world. There are two provisos for this. It has to be true and it has to be personal. This allows you to exploit information beyond the story, because the student who is relating the experience of what happened to people probably has an idea of what happened afterwards. The student delivers his talk. All of these people are business people. They will have experienced a similar thing. There'll be a lot of nodding and smiling, questions asked, commenting, and you have the rich soil right there for a conversation-rich lesson. Encourage to chat to one another, to get comments, to ask questions, because this opens up the functional language of the lesson as well. Functional language which you can use as part of your hard teaching later on in the lesson. There is more teacher talk, as I said, than in other regimes, but this is necessary for two reasons. First of all, you are part of the conversation. Be authentic about sitting in a corner taking notes as your class is chatting. And also you are a model. They are listening to someone who has the language under control, and it also gives them listening practice. And the second reason that it's good that it is more teacher-led is that these people don't have time. They don't have the luxury of time to go in little pairs and groups and find examples of the present perfect and have a little natter in the corner about why they think the present perfect is used and where they would put it to good use. They need focused, directed language discovery guided by the teacher. Or to pursue another analogy, if you go on holiday somewhere you've never been and you've got 2 weeks, don't take a book with you. Go on the little byways and hedgerows and go and look out all the little places that are beyond the tourist traps. You learn something about the country and hopefully have a jolly good time. But if you go into a business meeting somewhere, I advise, in order for you to be productive and make the most of your time, get there using your GPS system or your satellite navigation. This will take you directly to your destination, if you programmed it correctly, and will help you to make the most of the time you have there. And this is what we are, we, the English teacher, in a business English classroom. We are the sat-nav. It was said some time back, I think on ELT chat, that the student did the steering and the teacher was the petrol. I don't think so. I think the students do everything. We just guide them, programmed by them, to where they want to go. And now we're going to move on to the second pillar of Dogme, which is a focus on emergent language. There's been a lot of chat in the blogosphere about what emergent language actually means. Or we can sit here and deconstruct it until it means whatever you want it to mean. But when you're faced with a class of students short of time, it doesn't really matter what it is. Let me go back to the tennis. If you put 2 people on a tennis court with tennis rackets and a tennis ball, some kind of tennis game is going to emerge. Well, it's not going to be football, is it? Or golf. Something like a tennis game will emerge. And this is what happens in an English classroom. If you give them the equipment, something like English will emerge. And this is where the language of the lesson, or this is where the hard teaching of the lesson is focused. It's focused on the language that is coming out. Back to the anecdotes. The students will be talking, and he may be producing, I'm using he here because it's just easier than saying he, she. Okay? The student will be talking, and he will be using formed, assimilated or acquired language, and half-formed language, but language that he believes he needs. Who am I to say what the student needs? He needs this piece of language, but it's only half-formed, it's emerging with the focus of the lesson. So, you need to focus on that in order to allow the student to get control of that piece of language and to acquire it in such a way that when he needs it again, he has it to hand in its correct form. Right. So, according to Thornbury and Meddings, this emergent language needs to be scrutinized, manipulated, personalized, practiced. And this is how I do it. Bearing in mind that we've had all our students in our class tell us a little bit of an anecdote about I offered a suggestion at a meeting. So, say your student has said, I suggested him to make a new cost structure. Okay. I have selected this particular sentence as emergent because there could be confusion. Did he suggest him as the best person to set up the cost structure? Or did he suggest setting up the cost structure to this person? So we retrieve the language. I retrieve the half-formed language. I then recast it as correct language. So in my head, the objective is I suggested setting up a new cost structure to him. So I retrieved it, which is one of Meddings and Thornbury's strategies. I've recast it. And I now have to set up a scaffold for the student so that he can acquire that language to the point where he feels comfortable with it. So I do this normally by asking a question. So I'll ask the question, but make sure that in the question are all the elements that the student needs in order to answer the question correctly. And this usually takes the form of a tag. So I would say something like, you made a suggestion, didn't you? And the student would say, yeah, I made a suggestion.